So Brendan Rodgers to Manchester United. Brendan Rodgers. It's an interesting one. So Brendan Rodgers is in an interesting position. It's interesting that we would choose him at this point. Like having had Ole, and we've had Van Gaal, Mourinho and Moyes. Now Brendan Rodgers isn't really like any of these choices, but he's a little bit like David Moyes. Out of all the managers that we've had since Ferguson, he's the most similar to David Moyes. The reason why I say this, style of football completely different, but managing teams, sort of second grade Premier League teams, like obviously he managed Liverpool when they weren't as good as they are now. He took them to second, which was a very, very good achievement. And then, they kind of lost their way after they had to sell Suarez. So now he's with Leicester, and this Leicester team was getting into the Champions League previously, or was at least threatening to get in there, and now we kind of know they're not quite good enough to get in there. And that's kind of how Moyes' Everton team was. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad appointment, but what I'm interested to know is why the United board thinks it's such a good appointment. Like, shouldn't we be going for someone like Zidane? Obviously we've gone for managers who have got winning reputations like Louis van Gaal and Mourinho, but they had both visibly lost their way before coming to United. Both of them had sort of visibly lost their way. It had been a significant period of time since they'd won. I know Mourinho had won the trophy with Chelsea, but he'd really fucked that up towards the end, and he had not looked the same since he was at Real Madrid. And after we saw all that unravel, why did we still go for him? And I actually quite like the idea of Brendan Rodgers at United, and I'll explain why. I think at Leicester he's established like a solid defensive foundation, and at times they can play quite good football. I mean, is he sort of an elite manager? Is he good enough to, you've got to look at it in a sense of we've got to compete now with 4 elite managers. Like Pep Guardiola, Tuchel, Klopp, they're elite. Conte is elite. I think we've got a real problem just getting into the top 4 now this season, and that's because I think Spurs will be very lifted by the fact that they've now got Conte as their manager. I really think that's going to be a big factor in the season going forward. Not that it's going to be an immediate. I don't think he's immediately going to win anything with Spurs, but I think they could beat us to top 4 with Conte, especially if we don't replace Solskjaer. I think Solskjaer has to go, and this is the first time I've said this. I do think he has to go. He's not the only problem at the club, but he's quite a big problem with the club. So I do think we need to get a new manager. Is Brendan Rodgers the right man? I don't know. I think he's a relatively young manager. He's got a good football philosophy. We'll play good football under Rodgers, but it's a case of is the board going to respect him enough to give him the backing? I mean, I suppose they would, because they've done that with Solskjaer. But it's like, how many managers are you going to let spend hundreds of millions and just not do anything? And I've said this for a while. I think the problem runs a lot deeper than the manager, and it runs a lot deeper than the players. So I don't necessarily think someone like Rodgers is going to make us sort of a long-term success again. I think we need to chop and change at the top. I think we can potentially win a cup in the next couple of years. If we were to get Brendan Rodgers now, he could potentially rebuild our squad a little bit in the summer. But again, it's all this chopping and changing. All these different managers have brought these different players in, and then whoever the next guy is, it's just a mess. It's a mess. However, I'll tell you, I've sort of been quite negative in this video, but I'll tell you a couple of things that I do think he'll bring to the table. I think he is going to make sort of players like sort of Donny van der Beek and players that have been sidelined, maybe Anthony Martial. I feel like those type of players will flourish quite well under Brendan Rodgers. I feel like he prefers players with sort of that team ethic rather than all these mavericks that we've got running around at the moment. He's not going to tolerate Bruno Fernandes running up front when we've got 2 centre midfielders just sitting there. He might, the thing is, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. But I still think there's only so long that someone like Brendan Rodgers is going to tolerate him just not really doing any defensive work, especially if Ronaldo doesn't score, then it's a luxury that isn't worth having at the end of the day. And in the Champions League, he's been excellent, but Premier League, not been so great. The goal scoring record isn't that good. So he's not done that good. And then you've got, Rashford, who never tracks back and gives the ball away all the time. I don't know how much Brendan Rodgers is going to necessarily tolerate that. So it might mean that these players will need to change their ways if he comes in. And they'll need to sort of focus on a more possession-based, team-based game of football rather than just being a group of individuals the whole time like we've seen recently. I think Brendan Rodgers will help us implement a footballing system. So I saw the news this morning that we're sort of ready to trigger some kind of release clause for Brendan Rodgers, which is, a bit weird. You don't normally talk about managers having a release clause, but if that's what we need to do, then I don't know. I think him or Zidane, I don't know if there's any better available options at the moment. Other than trying to get, I think it would be much more difficult to try and get a Nagelsmann or a Ten Hag, whatever his name is, the Ajax guy. Trying to get either of them would be much more difficult than trying to get Brendan Rodgers. And Brendan Rodgers is a Premier League proven manager. So I do think it's actually quite a good choice out of the options that we've got. I just don't think it guarantees our success. So I'm not actually too unhappy about this. I feel like he's going to implement a good system of football if we were to get Brendan Rodgers, and I think he would be able to restore us to Champions League football if we're not able to get in this season. But ultimately, I don't think he can make Man United a title-winning team. And that's what I would say, because Man City and Liverpool and Chelsea, with the managers they've got, if their managers continue to stay, they're going to take some serious beating. And I hate to say it, but it's true. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Brendan Rodgers in the comments. If you're new, please hit the subscribe button and like the video as always. Thank you.